Everyone, happy Boxing Day. I hope you had a great Christmas, Chinese League of Legends Nostalgia Day, whatever holiday you celebrate. Today I'm going to talk about the recent LPL group restructuring and draw. Okay, so first thing to note is that I'm not really going to talk a little bit about the benefits of best of twos and best of threes because I think this is a separate issue and it's something that I want to cover in the future in comparing LPL and Europe and the format change that occurred in Europe and the format change that occurred in LPL because I think that's a fruitful juxtaposition. For now, I'm mostly just going to talk about the fact that LPL regular season is splitting into two groups and an NBA conference style format, if you will, where each team in Group A plays each other twice, each team in Group B plays each other twice, and teams in Group A play teams in Group B once. The games are best of threes, of course. Now, initially when I heard of this format, I thought that there were positives for it. Something that I'd actually considered myself when I thought about how would I change the LPL group stage and make it better. Mostly this is because I think teams are not using their practice very well, and to encourage them to try to find advantages with practices, cutting down on the number of games and the number of specific opponents they have to face can be beneficial. So right now, I think the League of Legends community is trending towards the idea that more is better, which I don't agree with at all, because if you remember, right, we used to have Super Week, and teams didn't like that, fans didn't like that, and teams had to prepare for multiple opponents, all these other things, whereas now we're moving towards more is better because the LCK did well and they had best of threes, so we should all have best of threes. I really hate to break it to you, but the LCK/OGN has always done great, not because of best of threes. They did a tournament format with a group stage where they faced 3 separate opponents in best of twos. And that was it. They had the shortest regular season of anyone else. It wasn't even a regular season, it was like tournament bracket seeding. And they still dominated. So I don't understand this trend to playing more games gives you more practice, gives you a better leg up, especially when I think it's actually been a bit detrimental to, depending on practice culture, of course. Like, I think because different leagues have different practice culture and it doesn't matter what format OGN is, they're always going to practice very hard and very seriously, and it doesn't matter what format skill is, and they'll probably always practice terribly until they figure something out. But the LPL, you could probably encourage teams to prepare, or some teams to prepare more for specific opponents if they had fewer opponents that they had to face per week, or if they had fewer opponents that they had to prepare for during the regular season, and only had to focus on other opponents in bracket stage. I would say actually something good would be to switch to more NAEU format where you're facing each team is facing one opponent per week. You have like the quarterfinals one week, then you have the semifinals one week, etc. So I think that would actually be something that's more beneficial to LPL than increasing the number of games. So I like the group conference format because it would limit those sorts of things. Of course, if you're also playing teams intergroup, then it limits it less, and I still think we're going to have this issue where teams are going to not really care that much about preparing or not practice as hard. And again, every time I bring this up, I'm not just making this up. You have teams saying that they don't treat scrims as seriously, so they play more random stuff in regular season games for the most part. I mean, there are always exceptions to these sorts of things. So initially, the idea had some appeal. Of course, there are also problems with it too, just looking at it bare without even getting into the nitty-gritty of which teams goes where. You have a problem where top teams only face each other once, maybe. This isn't as fun for the fans. You don't get to see that kind of growth. That's fine. Okay, I can see that that's a potential issue, as well as groups being uneven. And that's really the main issue, because when we talk about how these groups are seeded, it's based on a tier assessment. The tier assessment places tier 1 team into each group, 2 tier 2 teams into each group, 2 tier 3 teams into each group, and 1 tier 4 team into each group. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, first of all, how this was seeded, looking at this, and what these tiers broke down into. As you can see on the board, sorry for the image quality, I watched this on my cell phone and took a screenshot from there, so the image doesn't really get that big. The Tier 1 teams are LGD and EDG. Tier 2 teams are QG, Invictus Gaming, Vici Gaming, Snake. Tier 3 teams are OMG, Masters 3, WE, Royal Never Give Up. And Tier 4 teams are Hyperyouth Gaming and Energy Pacemaker All. Right away you see problems, because first of all, this doesn't take into, you're seeding these tiers based on LPL Summer 2015. Been a very long offseason with a lot of roster changes. So a team like OMG probably isn't even a tier 3 team anymore. They're probably worse than Hyperyouth Gaming and Energy Pacemaker All, because they replaced their jungler with TBQ and their AD carry with SMLZ. Allegedly. The TBQ thing isn't officially it. That's terrible. Right there. I don't even know where you'd put them with that. Royal Never Give Up, some people expect might be better. Things like that. These are reasons why the tier format might not necessarily be the best if you're based on last split's performance and you have a long off season. The other thing is that you're basing this on playoffs performance, okay? Teams don't play the same way in regular season that they do in playoffs in general. For example, LGD, they placed 6th and 5th, I think, in the regular season, and then they placed 2nd and 1st. So you're kind of throwing away your tier 1 spot in Group A by placing LGD in tier 1, because it's entirely possible that Snake and QG Reapers will place above them in the group just because of how LGD have used their practice time in their group stage in the past. They've been one of the biggest perpetrators of not playing regular season as well. Really bad that they're creating these tiers based off of past season playoffs performance in particular. What would you do? Maybe you put QG as the other tier 1 team, because I think that they and Snake have, as more recent LSPL to LPL promotion teams, have actually had much better practice ethic and have stuck with it, because the LSPL practice situation and prep situation, as Edward Gaming's manager Sencha said, is actually much better than an LPL. So when they first started out, Edward Gaming used to only scrim LSPL teams. QG and Snake have a pretty good approach to regular season, and they could actually place over LGD in that group. Really, the problem is that when you have a team like Edward Gaming that's just been so dominant, it's really hard to create an equivalent. You don't really have a balance in the league for the regular season. Edward Gaming in spring, they were ridiculously dominant. They lost maybe like 5 games, and then in summer, of course, they had more problems with the health issues of their solo laners, so they rotated out Cora 1 and Pawn a lot, but when they put those back in, they didn't lose a single game for the regular season after Cora 1 rejoined the lineup. It's looking like from the recent roster changes that they're going to mostly stick with Cora 1 and transfer their subs back to their LSPL team. So you can kind of expect that Edward Gaming will have a very serious approach to the regular season. They'll do very well and they'll be dominant again. And Group B doesn't really have potential for an upset. Okay, you can kind of already expect Edward Gaming is going to go through the semifinals. I think Group A, it's a lot harder to say that, because QG and Snake both placed above LGD Gaming in the previous seasons. And again, the format changed significantly. And this is something that I want to talk about more too, is that I think that the bracket seeding for this format is probably the best thing about it, because there is a distinct advantage for each group placing. Place in each group both get biased to semifinals. The second place in each group both get biased to quarterfinals, and the other 2 quarterfinals opponents are chosen based upon the 3rd place versus 4th place from each group. So Group A's 3rd place faces Group B's 4th place, Group B's 3rd place faces Group 4's 4th place, and on top of that, the 3rd place teams get a 1 match advantage going into the bracket. So already there's a clear advantage for each separate placing. And then even in 5th and 6th, who have to play promotion, the 5th place team has 2 chances to get back into the league, whereas the 6th place team, they lose 1 BO5 and they're pretty much done. They're not getting back into the league. It's a great thing, and that might actually encourage LGD Gaming to play a little bit more seriously. Some of these other teams that have strong rosters to play a little bit more seriously, because there's an advantage to getting 2nd place, 3rd place, 4th place, 1st place that's very clear, you know, in each separate placing. On how they did in spring and summer of 2015, there's really no reason to expect that LGD will play the group stage super hard, and QG or Snake might come out ahead of them. One reason why I think people are kind of overrating Group B relative to Group A is because, yeah, I agree. EDG, right there, that's sunk. You know, you're not going to have a Tier 1, whereas there's actually a competition for Tier 1 in Group A. The one thing I would say, though, is that Group B's Tier 2 games, Invictus Gaming and Vici Gaming, I don't think they're going to be that super focused on regular season either. I don't think they're going to be very competitive. Royal Never Give Up, I don't know. I hear their scrim culture is not that great either. So I think Royal Never Give Up and Invictus Gaming, VG Gaming might be a bit of a wash in Group B. So you have a jumble for second to fourth. So it's not really that different. Whereas I think also in Group A you have a clear fourth place. I think WE is probably going to be fourth because their roster is significantly better than Masters 3s or Energy Pacemaker Alls. No, Energy Pacemaker All and WE could be somewhat close. It's unclear at the moment. But I think that when you look down to it, you can kind of say that there's a clear first place in Group B, okay, and then a fight for second to fourth. And then you have in Group A, okay, you have a fight for first to third, probably. Maybe a fight for fourth or fifth, and then sixth, obviously. So I think that there's definitely levels of competition in each. It's just that in B, the clear placement is going to be your Edward Gaming at the very top. So these are the issues that I think is I don't think that Group B is significantly better than Group A at all. People are looking at the rosters and they're saying, oh my gosh, you know, Royal Never Give Up's roster is stacked. No matter who they play, they actually have good players. The point is that Royal Never Give Up, on paper, great roster. Top 3 team in the league, right there. You know, just if you're looking at the quality of the players on the roster, Royal Never Give Up is great. Unfortunately, that's not all we're looking at. We're looking at how teams traditionally have treated the regular season in terms of where they're going to place. Invictus Gaming, Vici Gaming, you know, I don't actually even think Vici Gaming's roster is that great. People talk about the change to Vici Gaming's roster, like Easy Hoon over Amada as a huge upgrade. We still have Endless and some guy with almost no competitive experience in the bottom lane. You have no bottom lane right now. I mean, it could get better over time, but right now it seems like the bottom lane is pretty much a non-factor. So you have Dandy back in the jungle. Okay, that's great. You have communication problems with Dandy being a Korean jungler and Chinese laners. You expect that kind of thing to happen. So every time you have a Korean jungler in a foreign team, especially LPL. So I'm actually only going to restrict it to LPL because that's where I've seen it the most. There are just games where they don't do anything. They don't speak they can't communicate well, they can't convey what they want. The Chinese laners are going super aggressive for no reason. They don't know what to do. So I think that that's something that you have to take into consideration, that Dandy going back to jungle isn't necessarily going to be at least an immediately significant upgrade. It's probably going to be an upgrade, but not significant. And then top lane, Long pretty good. So you have a pretty good top jungle solo, but they're not necessarily going to be carries, because I think Easy Hoon is not necessarily an aggressive carry player. And then top laner, Long has been a carry in the past, but he's not consistent, reliable top laner. So Vici, I think's roster is overrated, and Invictus Gaming's roster is pretty overrated. You have Cacao rookies at tie still. So similar situation where the bottom line is a non-factor, and you have a Korean jungler. So I think those rosters are a bit overrated. I don't think they're necessarily better than Snake or QG's rosters even. I think, first of all, QG and Snake are going to have a better practice ethic and a better approach, and their rosters aren't necessarily worse than VG's and IG's compositionally either. So I don't really understand why people are looking at, based on Tier 2 teams, and saying Group B is so stacked. You know, Group A actually has more significant Tier 2 teams. IG's probably going to be relegated. I'm not going to lie. Unless they have something that they're pulling out of a hat that no one is seeing coming, which is still definitely possible. Pacemaker, all Hyper Youth Gaming are going to be interesting to see. I think they could potentially be middle of the pack, but we aren't going to see like a QG or a Snake this year, probably. Rate Group A as having more contenders for the top slot and being more interesting in that respect. And I think Group B has more contenders for second or whatever. So overall, I don't think one group is significantly more stacked than the other. I think they're pretty comparable. I think the group draw went pretty okay. The one factor you definitely have to consider is just Edward Gaming. Edward Gaming is going to screw up any situation where you have groups, and until another team gets their act together and decides to take regular season seriously and also have the funding and the structure to hire really, really good players and keep them motivated the way Edward Gaming is, you're not going to have very comparable groups. Everyone, happy Boxing Day. I hope you had a great Christmas, Chinese League of Legends Nostalgia Day, whatever holiday you celebrate. Today I'm going to talk about the recent LPL group restructuring and draw. Okay, so first thing to note is that I'm not really going to talk initially when I heard of this format, I thought that there were positives for it. Something that I'd actually considered myself when I thought about how would I change the LPL group stage and make it better. Mostly this is because I think teams are not using their practice very well. A little bit about the benefits of best of twos and best of threes, because I think this is a separate issue and it's something that I want to cover in the future in comparing LPL and Europe and the format change that occurred in Europe and the format change that occurred in LPL, because I think that's a fruitful juxtaposition. For now, I'm mostly just going to talk about the fact that LPL regular season is splitting into two groups and an NBA conference style format, if you will, where each team in Group A plays each other twice, each team in Group B plays each other twice, and teams in Group A play teams in Group B once. The games are best of threes, of course. No, and to encourage them to try to find advantages with practices, cutting down on the number of games and the number of specific opponents they have to face can be beneficial. So right now, I think the League of Legends community is trending towards the idea that more is better.